a lot of people get into real estate, with the intentions of being a landlord and, or flipping houses or, there's just a lot of different strategies. I like these little deals because you can do literally thousands of these, but you can do one. Just do one to get started with. That's what I like to show you. In fact, some of my advanced students, what I do is I take the very basics right with this book right here, and I show you, look, buy something for a couple $100, turn it into a couple thousand. You can scale that up to any size deals in real estate you want.
Welcome to the Jennifer J. Hammond Podcast. Jennifer is a licensed realtor, educator, speaker, and best-selling author. Jennifer's goal is to help you find your yay in every day.
Welcome. And so John Lee, let's introduce you to anyone who doesn't know you. I'm so excited to be bringing you and your wisdom from all your many years. So actually, I would love if you would share a little bit about your history, because you started in mortgages and then you started doing real estate investing. And I actually even have in front, I have Secrets of a Dealionaire. And so I want to talk a little bit about this, because when I entitled the room, we also talked about this, taking $200 and turning it into $2,000. And so often people just think, oh, real estate investing, oh, it's too complicated. It's too much. It's not a good time. I mean, I hear so many excuses on that. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about your past and why, what you've done with even the word Dealionaire. What does that mean? And why did you go from mortgages into real estate investing?
Oh, that's a deep story, but we'll make it as brief as possible, Jennifer.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I was a mortgage broker, and I worked with a lot of people nobody else wanted when I was new. Okay, I would get all the people that with the difficult situations, we'll say. So I had to work with their credit, some other things like that. Well, one of the things that I learned after a short period of time is I came across some investors. Okay, investors have a different mindset than the average person buying a house or trying to refinance or whatever the case may be. And I liked investors because they were pretty flexible. You could, if something went wrong, it wasn't really that big of a deal because they were flexible to make the deal work. Well, I like that. Well, some of the deals were very, very difficult. And so I went through, sometimes many months, sometimes even years, getting somebody in line where they could buy a house. But that was good because it taught me, but it also, helped out a lot of people. One of the biggest reasons I started to even cross over into the investment world, though, is because I would show up at the closing table, the title company or the attorney's office, depending on which state we were in. And I did all the work. I found the buyers, the sellers, put everybody together, had to get the appraisal, everything. I mean, all the pieces. There's many pieces that go into every real estate transaction. And they would make all the money, and I did all the work. It just didn't make sense. Well, I'd make a few $1,000s. Of course, it was good money. There's nothing wrong with that. But they would make $50,000, $60,000, $100,000. And it's like, wait a minute, they just own this for a few months or maybe even a few years or even sometimes not even that long, on the wholesale deal. And I would say, I'm on the wrong side of the table. So I started slowly learning things like that. Well, one of the things I came across, I'm also an amateur coin collector. And back in the old days of dial-up, I used to get on eBay to look at coins and I would do that in the middle of the night because the downloads were so slow. It's not like it is today.
Right.
Today you get the pictures right away.
I know. I was looking at some old files, and it was funny. I was looking at them because they were paper files. They're not digitalized yet. And they have faxes in them. And I was like, oh boy, I have been in real estate a long time. I remember when we run around all over the city trying to get someone to sign a document, and now everything's digital. I just send them the e-signatures, and it's changed so much over the years. But anyway, the concept of what you're talking about, how you started in mortgages and helped the people that were having a hard time. Because again, one of the things I hear all the time is people who, they just don't think that they can do it. It's not the right time. Oh, it's not in my area, all of those things. So as you were on this journey, you learned a lot about putting all the pieces together, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the things that I found on eBay, which got me to the dealionaires, basically what I do today still is I found these little deals. There was a guy out of North Carolina that was selling Arkansas properties, and they would sell an auction for $500 to $1,000. And I thought, well, this is pretty good. If I could buy something for $500 and sell it for $1,000, that's a lot better than my little $25 pennies that I'm making, $10 or $20 on.
Right.
And it's for the same amount of effort. So I thought, well, let me try that. So I got all the information. Here's the key right here. I drove down to Arkansas for almost 2 years, like every month, a couple times a month, and I didn't buy anything. I ended up finding properties here in Missouri just like it. The guy was buying them for back taxes for a couple $100 and selling them for a few hundred more and making money. And I found them right here. But if I would have bought something in Arkansas, all my trips could have been tax deductible, at least the majority of them.
Speaking of the tax deductible part, that is something that is such an important part of being an entrepreneur in any level. So I interrupt you just for a second to tell you next week, we're actually having Linda DeMarlar come on, and Linda. So I hope you'll join us next week while we quiz Linda on all of the tax deductions on I want to say all of the business expenses that so often are overlooked. And she just has such a fun time sharing those. So next Saturday morning, we're going to have Linda for a full hour. Yay!
Oh, that's great. I can't wait to listen to Linda. She's always full of nuggets of such great mission critical information if you're doing your taxes. I mean, and especially I know with all the changes coming up, I can't wait to tune in and see what she has to say with what's going on right now.
And, she's always excited about, the latest and greatest, meaning like what is up on the Capitol Hill, what is being talked about, but also, what has recently passed that probably they're not all the, I want to say, CPAs are actually talking about yet. So it's always fun because she loves to be on the edge of any of the changes, good and bad. I mean, sometimes they're not all good for us, but as entrepreneurs, it's really important that we know those tax ones. So anyway, I interrupted you again. So you're talking about, you could have written off all of these trips that you had as you were going back and forth. So please continue.
About 2 years worth, almost. I mean, it was almost 2 full years before I bought anything. If I would have just bought a $500 or $1,000 property from him and lost the money, I could have applied all that towards at least a big portion towards the deductions of my tax. Well, anyway, I learned. Okay, another lesson. There's lessons all along if you pay attention. And in fact, one of the things that one of my mentors said, as you know, Robert Allen, one of the things he says is there's 3 ways that we hear things. I think we talked about this before.
Yeah.
You brought that up. So first, you get the lesson in the whisper. Then if you don't pay attention, you get hit in the head with a brick. And then if you still don't pay attention, you drive right into the brick wall. So you do have to pay attention. But the point is just there's lessons all along this. And if you pay attention, you will get the lesson. They're invaluable. That's one reason I have actually, I think, written a few books that I have done, because mainly for me. Okay, because the lessons are for me, and then I wanted to share them so you don't have to make the same mistakes I did. But getting back to what I found was, and a lot of people get into real estate, with the intentions of being a landlord and or flipping houses, or there's just a lot of different strategies. I like these little deals because you can do literally thousands of these, but you can do one. Just do one to get started with. That's what I like to show you. In fact, some of my advanced students, what I do is I take the very basics right with this book right here, and I show you, look, buy something for a couple $100, turn it into a couple thousand. You can scale that up to any size deals in real estate you want.
And I like in your book, let's use some examples, because I know there's one in here where you bought it for $91, which, I think everybody can, figure out some way to buy something for $91. And then you sold it for $454. So there's a nice profit, especially if you look at percentages. That's pretty nice. And then you have another one in here you bought for $426 and you sold for $5,600. I mean, when you look at that kind of stuff, and I would love for you to share some of the stories. Can you share some stories? And we love stories on how you can take a little bit of money and become a real estate investor with just really simple I think it's so neat because the way that you've created your own little thing, and I say your own little thing because it's the same concept we've seen a bunch of times. But what you've done to me is you've just simplified it. If you got a couple $100 and you want to learn how to do some real estate investing, you can take, like that $91 and turn it into a couple hundred, or you could take a couple hundred and turn it into a couple thousand. So will you share one of those stories? I know you have so many.
Sure. I'll just tell you, my favorite ones, Jennifer. And what I've learned when I look for properties to buy, okay, the state will give you the legal descriptions, okay, or the county will whenever you look those up. And one of the things I've learned along the way is you can split these and you can combine them without getting any any surveys or engineering work, okay, because that can be a big deal. That can cost a lot of money. Okay, for surveys, okay, and even the spot surveys when we buy a house, they don't really go out and look, but they give you a copy and they check it out, and it's still a few $100s that you have to pay. Well, one of the things that I learned, I could buy, and a good example is I bought 4 of these stream front lots, all separate deeds, not too long ago. Okay, I bought one for $15, 2 for $42, and 1 for $75. Okay, so I had less than $200 tied up. I mean, even with a $36 recording fee. I mean, it wasn't very much money. What I did is I could combine all those into one property, even though they were separate deeds. So I ended up selling these properties for $13,999. Okay, I got $200. No, I always go 10 times. My business model is 10 times what I pay for something. Now it sounds ridiculous because that's 1,000% percentage profit. It's actually way more than that. Okay, like this example right here is, but people don't believe you. So I just say I try to make 10 times my money. Okay, and keep it real simple because you can understand that on a $2,000 or $200 deal. But this particular one, I had less than $200 in. I sold it for $13,999. I got 1 month or $200 down. Okay, so I got my money back. Then I sold it for $139 a month. I financed it 0% interest, and it's every month $139 until paid. Now, this story is a little funny too, because the guy immediately, he made 3 or 4 payments. He paid through PayPal, which a lot of stuff is done online these days, so it's not a big deal. But he goes, I'd rather write checks on my business account. He got a hold of me after a couple of months. He said, would you take checks? And I said, yeah. He goes, do you mind if I pay for the whole, send you the money for the whole year up front? I said, no, that's great. And I have a lot of people that do that. They'll pay for the year or 6 months at a time or a year at a time. I said, great. Well, about a week later, I got an envelope in the mail. It had 12 checks in there. He gave me one for each month post dated. Okay.
Wow. But that's it is. It's so nice because again, and I want you to step back because I think there are a couple things here that is so easy for us to kind of go zipping past. And right now, there are a lot of people who are having trouble, and they've had some dings on their credit, just like we talked about in the beginning when you were doing mortgages as a mortgage person. And there are people. So, for instance, to have somebody, an owner, finance the deal, you are giving them an opportunity. So talk about being an owner finance, becoming the bank. I think this is something that so often it just seems so ridiculous and overwhelming of a concept to become the bank. And they think, oh, you must have to have millions of dollars to be able to do that. So talk about that. How can you help somebody who's having some trouble with credit and be the bank by financing basically the property that they want to buy?
Okay, I have 2 different ways I do it. What we're going to talk about right here, though, is what you're talking about, what I just did here. I advertise these sometimes with no credit checks, okay? Because if this is vacant land, it's not a house. I do my houses a little bit differently on my criteria and how I screen people. But this here, I don't. If you send me the money and you can sign your name, it really doesn't matter because you can't take the property. One of the things that I learned, my dad, he used to have a piano business for many years, and he did a rent-to-own thing back before it was even popular, back in the 80s, I guess, or early 90s. But sometimes the people would take off with him. I had a friend that had a car business here in town. He financed him, and he did all he had to do was come up with the down payment, which is outrageous and all that. But people did it. But only 7 out of 10 worked. Okay, that's not good in my world. I want most of the stuff to work. There's an occasional bad one, but these here helping the people with their credit. If you can make the monthly payment, like in the case we just showed, the $139, if you can do that, and I'm really flexible too, as far as that goes. I mean, I'm going to work with somebody. The very first one I ever did, my lawyer put together for me. It was a mobile home and a cabin. And that was a great deal too. It was on a tax property. I had a couple $1,000s into even making it livable, counting everything. And I sold it for like 29,000 and financed that for a few years. My lawyer did it. It was a convenient 6.5 pages, contract for deed is what he called it. Since then, I've narrowed it down to 1 page with 3 paragraphs for myself. That's how I do mine today. But the problem was the guy had heart surgery 2 times during that period, and he couldn't make payments. Of course, the paperwork says, just like a mortgage, after 3 months, you can take it back, or, they voluntarily give it back, is the way I have it worded. But I wasn't about to take this guy's property.
Right.
So I'm pretty flexible about it. The problem was, and this was a big learning experience for me. The problem is my lawyer put it in at 6.5% interest. Sounds pretty good. I don't care which amortization schedule I look at. We could never figure out exactly how much the guy owed when he went through 2 different places of not paying me. It's so difficult. So I completely changed the way I do things now. What I do, and I'll show you an example, like on my houses, my rental properties I have now. I don't have rental properties. This is what I do. I'll take $100,000 house, and instead of putting a percentage on there of 3% or 5% or whatever, I make them 0%. But I make the total cost $300,000 on that $100,000. Now it comes off, it's simple math, 0% interest. It comes off every month. Everybody knows what it is. That's something I had to learn, because I don't want to be a complicated bank. Okay. I want everything to be simple for everyone and everybody to understand.
Well, and I think that's a really good point though, John, as well, is that it's so important to understand, it's like compound interest. It's one of those things, amortization, you start to realize why the banks make so much money. Mm-hmm. And it's really important to understand, you want to keep everything, at least from my viewpoint, and I know you agree with me on this, is that we want to keep things as simple as possible. Not only simple for the person who is going to be your tenant, or is going to be a rent to own, or, even a purchaser, somebody who wants to buy, but they want to buy over, a certain amount of time. We want to keep that as simple as possible. So I love your example here where, you're taking that thing and you are charging them interest, and they are paying more. But I think it's really also very honest, because so often when people there's a document that happens at settlement, and I'm sure you remember the truth in lending document, where if you really looked at it, and if people, and sometimes I've seen people just completely freak out on this because they don't really realize how much money they're paying for that mortgage. And if it went all the 20 years or 30 years or whatever the length of it is, it's a lot of extra money. So look at it from that viewpoint. And anyway, I love the fact that you're making it simple as possible. So let's go back to your example with the 100,000, and you go ahead and you make the payments very simple so that they can see it. And do you send them a document that shows those payments?
Absolutely. Yes. What I do, I've actually simplified as much as I know how to simplify it. Let's put it that way. Maybe it might be simpler, but I don't know. When I sell the property, I just have a 1-page sales contract. It says on there exactly what it is, whatever you're putting down on it, how much the payments are. Now, in the cases of houses, unlike the little small properties, I have a little different screening process. Most of these people are second chance people, and I find out why. I like to. There's a little way, I have a different questionnaire that I get into it rather than an application. I want to find out why. And I want homeowners. I don't want renters. I don't do lease options. I do not do rent to own. I don't do anything like that. I want a homeowner. In fact, that's worked so well for me since I've developed, since I kind of came across, did that into my own twist on it. I have homes I have not seen in several years. And the way I've set these up, I still get more money per month than I would have in rent. And I did in rent. And there's absolutely no maintenance on my part. I am just strictly the bank. And people love it. I've got a stack of thank you notes from the deals I've done. I got thank you notes from properties where people giving me properties for free. That's another story.
Well, and let's talk about that though for a minute, because this is where I need to figure out how we can do a whiteboard. So explain that concept, because I think a lot of times people don't understand. So you're giving somebody a rent to own, and so you're not the landlord, you're the bank.
Right.
So you're having this, I mean, to me, that is such, a pearl of wisdom in the real estate investing market, that when you're a landlord, you really do have a lot of responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And you do need to be very responsive. So if you're not going to do it, then you need to have a management team that is going to be there for short-term, long-term, any kind of rental you have. But if you're the bank and they're the one owning it, they're making payments toward it, but it's their responsibility. So this is a huge shift in responsibility, but it's also a different viewpoint that most people just don't see. And so anyway, I would love for you to expand a little bit on kind of both sides of that. Pretend you have a whiteboard.
Okay. Yeah, the way I do it, I just keep it real simple. My screen, here's the way I first did it. Okay. When I first started doing this, I made the houses better than rent ready, because you got to give the queen her castle. First of all, there's some other details. I put a lot of these in my my book, Landlord Pennies to Banker Dollars. Okay. I just broke it down just to give you some examples of how I do some of this kind of stuff. But it's not like a rental. I don't call it rent to own. I got to be very clear. If somebody says that when they come to me, that's not the person I'm looking for. I want somebody, and I hate to say it, but they've had some rocks. They might have had a bad divorce. They might have had a foreclosure. They might have lost a job. There's all kinds of reasons. We all go through these disasters and things, as you know. None of us get out alive. We all go through this stuff. Okay.
That's a great way to say it. None of us get out of here alive. We're all going to end up, unfortunately, having death. So we don't get out of it alive, and we all don't get out of it without the scrapes and bruises. And I really appreciate you saying that, because I think it's so interesting. No matter who you've seen out there who's been wildly successful, there's not a single person who hasn't had something go wrong for any variety of reasons. So being that person, like you're saying, and being compassionate, that's who you're looking to help, right? That's the person you're interested in. So it's not just a rent to own. What do you call it?
I want a homeowner. I want somebody that wants to buy a house, but they've had some rocks. I want somebody that can come up with a little bit of money. I don't, there's a lot of people out there, especially with the lease options. They say, well, I need, 10,000, non-refundable option consideration money and all this kind of, you start convoluting all the conversation and confusing. And I've been through all this, for 3 years. I've watched people do this. I tried some couple lease options myself. In fact, I've got a good story of one, why I don't do it. And actually, it's in my book, Secrets to Winning with Fred. Real estate
Fred.
guy.
Yeah. So tell people about what is Fred?
Fred, this just shows you how I've turned some deals around on things that a couple of them are real small deals that I've just kind of made work. Some of them are disasters.
But go back to, what does Fred stand for?
Failed real estate deals.
I think that's a great one. I like winning with Fred, because it sounds like Fred's a person. And yet I love that acronym, because Fred, failed real estate deals. I mean, so often we just, when something is failing, people run for the hills. They're so not interested in confronting the chaos and trying to sort it out. So I'm sorry, continue with, how do you win with Fred?
Well, there's a lot of different ways. You just have to take the situation to it. I've got, I believe, 8 stories in that book. In fact, if you want a copy of that, send me an email. I'll give you a copy of that. I'll give you a digital copy. And it kind of explains some of the ways that I got into some of the other things that I do. But with the lease options, I lost over $25,000 on one deal in a few years, a 3-year deal. It should have been great. The market changed. Okay. We went through one of those, which I call ice ages at the time. Everything, it reminds me of what's going on now. And I don't want to put any bad vibes out there, but people I see right now that've been in the business 5 years, especially younger investors, 5 years, 7 years, they say, oh yeah, this is how you do it. You do the Burr method. You do this, you do that. You can't lose. Yes, you can lose. Okay. I have 2 properties right now that I refinanced back in the early 2000s because it was just like this, where everything was going up and you couldn't do anything wrong. I still owe more money on those by taking money out for other projects than I could even get for the properties today. So keep that. That's something to very much keep in mind when you start doing all these kind of strategies. But you have to take what you have and make something work out of it. came up because of these things with 10 different ways you can make money on an upside down property and make everybody happy. Okay. There's ways to do that. There's always somebody that needs a place to live and they want to buy a house. They don't, people, I hate to say, but people don't look at what things cost. Like you just mentioned, if you pay your 30-year mortgage, you're going to pay, I don't know, 2.5, 3 times if you got, depending on your interest rate of what you borrowed. Okay. Even with these great interest rates we have now, you're going to pay at least double. Well, people don't mind paying a little bit more in rent. So let's just take our $100,000 house, for example, that you're going to pay me $300,000 for. It might rent for $1,100. You're probably going to pay me $1,395 a month. Okay. And you're going to take care of the taxes, the insurance, everything. Now, I still keep insurance on it because I've had 2 disasters. That's another whole story. In fact, I should write a book on that. Okay. But the insurance is important, but there was couple of different things, and it's not always your own fault why things happen, but you have a fire and it wipes everything out. If there's any question, they're not paying you, and you still got to pay for your house if you have a mortgage on it. So,
as you know, John, I'm famous for the yay. So I want to make sure as we go off air that you say, is your grandson, is he around?
is Danny in here?
We can get him to say yay as well. It's so fun.
What, can you come here for a minute?
We can get everybody to say yay.
Let's see.
The yays are so fun. Oh, is he going to come? I'm so happy.
He's coming?
See if we can do a
buddy.
a yay.
He's on his way here.
Okay,
He's
good.
He's watching cartoons, I think. I'm not sure what he's doing.
What's his name?
Danny.
Danny, yeah.
Danny.
Danny's going to say yay. He's going to end the show with us. Okay.
Jennifer, say yay.
Yay.
Yay. There you go. Yay.
Okay, one more time.
One more.
Yay. That was perfect. Well, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure. Of course, John Lee, the Dillionaire. Go to thedillionaire@gmail.com. Thank you for the